Alright, we're going to do a little Q&A today. I like doing these because it answers your hiking, backpacking, through hiking, or gear related questions, and sometimes it's stuff that maybe I haven't covered in a different video, so I think these are really fun. Colin wants to know when I will be done with through hiking, and hopefully never. I mean, at this point I've hiked quite a bit. I think I've through hiked 15 different trails, and I've done through hikes or long section hikes for about 17,000 miles, and I'm not even a triple crowner. I haven't even done the Continental Divide Trail yet, and there's a whole bunch of other trails that I have a giant list of that are really exciting that I haven't done either. In the future I have aspirations of maybe going for like a double triple crown. You know, I would love to do the Pacific Crest Trail again. I would love to do the Appalachian Trail again, so why not? So hopefully I will never be done with through hiking. It's really something that I enjoy. It's something that I look forward to every single year, and you know, even when it comes to doing trails for a second time, I'm still really excited about doing those trails and seeing that place and making new memories there. Does hiking with half a sleeping pad risk ripping your quilt? For those who don't know, I only use a sleeping pad that is half the size of my entire body. So it runs from my shoulders all the way to about my butt. I'm gonna tell you that you really don't have to worry about this. I've never once had a problem with this. I've obviously been hiking this way for a very long time, and I've never noticed a difference. So I just don't think it's really a concern. The other big thing to keep in mind here is very, very frequently, I keep my backpack underneath my feet while I'm sleeping. So my quilt and my feet aren't directly on the ground. They're laying on top of my backpack. I think I do this because in a lot of cases, sleeping on top of like a cushy fabric or something might be a little bit more comfortable than just directly on the ground. It might be slightly warmer, so you know, that's kind of why I do it. But if you are concerned about your quilt just being on the ground and suffering abrasion, then keep your backpack underneath your feet at night. Sean asks about anxiety relief tips while hiking alone. There was actually a lot of questions in here about anxiety or loneliness, and it's certainly very understandable when you're out in the middle of nowhere. Like, I think loneliness gets to all of us, and certainly me as well. Something that really helps me with this is to play a podcast. There's podcasts that I've been listening to for the past like 10 years, and at this point, it almost feels like those are my friends. You know, I've been listening to them every single week for a decade. It makes me feel a lot more comfortable at night just to hear those voices of these people, and it just feels like they're here with me. You know, we're hanging out around the campfire, we're camping together. So my tip for anxiety while hiking alone is to maybe try playing a podcast and see if that makes you feel any better. What would I consider my worst possible case scenario on a through hike, and what would I do if I found myself in it? My worst case scenario and all of my worst times ever hiking, my closest to like being at serious risk have come from like near hypothermia, being wet and being cold. So that is my worst case scenario, and I'm sure it's different for all of us. And I think this is less about what would I do if I found myself in it, and more about prevention. How can I prevent these bad things from happening? So I think a lot of prevention kind of comes down to planning and awareness. I think that's a large part of how I've been able to get away with hiking so light on so many different trails, is because by the time I get to that trail, I already know every tiny little detail of what to expect. I've planned for it, I've prepared for it, I've tailored my gear towards it, so I am doing everything that I can to prevent these situations from happening, instead of finding myself in them and asking myself, what now? Is there some kind of relation to a sagging backpack, having a backpack that hangs really low, where your straps are just incredibly loose, to more experience? Because they see the most experienced hikers out there have really low sagging backpacks. I think I have an answer that maybe you wouldn't expect. Depending on the terrain, depending on if I'm going up a mountain, down a mountain, or if I'm hiking on flat, I adjust my straps. So when I'm hiking uphill, I will tighten my straps down, which pulls my backpack higher and makes my center of gravity higher. It makes climbing up a mountain feel easier for me doing that. When I'm going down a mountain, I will loosen my backpack way up And again, it lowers my center of gravity and it makes me feel more comfortable and it makes it feel better going down the mountain. So maybe on your next trip, try different tensions, whether you're going uphill, downhill, or walking on flat, and see if one is more comfortable. If you don't meet your goals for a trip, how do you shake it off? Well, sometimes it's really hard. Generally what I try and do is I try and refocus. You know, what has been really good about that trip? What did I really enjoy? How was that experience in reality, even though I didn't meet some arbitrary goal that I maybe set for myself? In the moment, if you can do that, it can really save a trip. If you're just like totally strung out on doing one specific thing and one specific goal, and it's just not working, it's hurting you, it's hurting a group dynamic, I think by trying to focus on, well, what is working for us? What is working for me? What am I enjoying out here? What are we enjoying out here? And how can we change and refocus the trip on that? So this is easier said than done, and I think it takes maybe a couple failures, a couple not so successful trips to get better at this, but definitely in time, you know, you learn from those kind of mistakes, and I think refocusing is the way. Roper 6 lives kind of in a much more arid, dry environment, and it seems like they are afraid a bit of hiking in the rain, especially multiple days of rain. I know you live in an arid, dry environment, but I also know at some point during the year it's going to rain, and I want you to get out and hike in it, near home, and try it, and ask yourself, what can I do to make this better for myself? Is it that umbrella? Is it that heavy rain jacket? Is it just not hiking in it at all? Like on the Appalachian Trail, when I hiked it, I carried an umbrella. I haven't carried an umbrella on very many other through hikes, but I'll tell you what, that umbrella made my life on the Appalachian Trail so much better, because I just had this little shelter from the rain wherever I went. So if you're going to these wetter climates, you just gotta ask yourself, how can I make these adjustments to my kit that is going to make my life better? What is the best mindset change that I have adapted to lower the cost of long hikes? I would say the biggest thing that I've done over the years is, when it comes to spending any kind of money, I ask myself, do I want this new pair of pants? Or do I want to go on a through hike? 14 years ago or something, I used to be a drinker and a smoker. And you want to know why I quit? Because I decided that I would rather go on a through hike. And that was a way that I could save up money way faster by not spending it on those things. You know, it's the power of desire, wanting one thing so much more than anything else. That is what has worked for me the most. Mark wants to know, do I prefer my super ultralight kind of setup, or have I been converted to a luxurious tent-carrying, inflatable pad-using kind of camper? I still prefer the super ultralight setup. I prefer the tarp, I prefer the foam mat. I still prefer those things, even after last year of trying all these much more luxurious options. I still tried those things for two reasons. One, because not every trip, every environment, and every season am I going to be able to use my super ultralight setup. So I want to have those things at the ready. You know, maybe I want to push the seasons and hike later into the year when it's a lot colder. Maybe I want to hike in a much more wet environment and I don't have the option of choosing the dry season. You know, as a lot of places, you can cherry pick the seasons, which will allow you to go lighter weight because some seasons are just better than others. You know, so a lot of times I will try and cherry pick those seasons, but I want to use that gear in case I don't really have that option. Or I want to do something regardless of the season. Now, the other reason I wanted to try those things was I wanted to better be able to recommend it to other people, because I very much so recognize that my super ultralight kit is going to be a nightmare for a lot of people. You've all seen my sleeping pad. It's like paper thin. There's a lot of people that are just never ever going to be comfortable on that, regardless of how comfortable I am on it. So I wanted to try out a Neo Air, an inflatable mattress, to be able to say that, hey, I use this stupid foam mat, but I think you should check this thing out instead, because it's going to be better for 99% of people out there. Jack asks, for someone wanting to go ultralight, what order would I buy new gear in? This is a phenomenal question, and at the moment, I'm not sure I have a great answer for it. I'll tell you what I did though, and maybe you'll see why I did it wrong. I started out with replacing my backpack first. And you wanna know what I found out when I got that 30-liter tiny little ultralight frameless backpack? That the only thing that I could fit in it from my old kit was my sleeping bag. I couldn't put my tent in there, I couldn't put a stove in there, I couldn't even put a beanie in there. It was so stuffed. So what did I do? I bought a smaller quilt that would fit in that backpack. So now I had a bag that could fit a quilt, but it could only fit a quilt and a tent. So that's actually when I first tried tarp camping, because I'm like, well, what's the smallest volume shelter out there? You know, and tarps are pretty cheap. So I bought a tarp, and the rest is kind of history for me. So they say to do your backpack last. I think what I did worked out for me in a weird, roundabout, terrible way, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. So I would go through your items that you currently have, I would weigh them, I would list them, and then I would just look through those things one by one, asking yourself, you know, what do I need right now? And what would benefit me the most? Skip says, as someone who has always used hiking boots, I'm trying out non-waterproof shoes now. Cool. What do you do with multiple days of rain and wet feet? Well, what I would ask you is, are your boots really gonna stay dry in multiple days of rain? Because whether it's a trail running shoe or a boot, it's still going to have this ginormous hole on top, which is perfectly situated for rain to just go into. And the problem then is that because the boots are waterproof and they don't breathe at all, they're just never gonna dry. You know, so that is a huge advantage of the trail runners, is I think your feet are gonna be wet either way. And my shoes, when that sun does come out, are gonna dry way faster than a pair of waterproof shoes. How do I plan the logistics of a lesser known trail, like the Grand Enchantment Trail, which I did last year? Well, first, the availability of information. If I'm gonna hike the Pacific Crest Trail, I can literally go on YouTube and find more than 1,000 videos about every little aspect of the PCT. If you do this for a hike like the Hayduke Trail, you're gonna find like 5. So you really gotta ask yourself, like, all right, what am I normally getting from these guides of other trails? And how can I figure that information out for myself? It's just the quantity of information out there about it just doesn't exist. And in a lot of ways, that's good. I feel like if you are doing these much harder trails, part of the fun is the planning, is the fact that it takes more effort to even just begin them. You know, the Appalachian Trail, you could start it tomorrow without any forethought or anything. You know, and the chances of your success are like not bad. You start the Grand Enchantment Trail tomorrow without like downloading offline maps on this weird mapping app and finding all this other weird information from 2014, like you're gonna have a bad time very quickly. That's kind of the difference, I think. You know, that you have to do a lot more research and planning to go out there and do them happily, comfortably, and safely. Do I have any through hiking plans in Europe? I'll say that the next international trail that I want to do is the Te Aroa Trail. It's not a through hike in Europe, it's a 1,800 mile trail across New Zealand. So what I want you to do is, if you're from Europe, I want you in the comments to let me know what is the coolest thing that I could do in Europe, so that I have something on my brain to start researching and planning to get out there and do it. Because I get asked this question all the time. And yeah, it's time. You know, it's time. I need to do it. All right, so that was it for the Q&A. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found some value in this. I hope I answered the questions good. I'm sorry I didn't get to every single one of them. There's a lot of them, and I'm running out of battery on this little thing. So I gotta go before the battery dies. Anyway, if you like this video, give me a little thumbs up, and if you want more hiking, backpacking content, subscribe to this channel soon I'm gonna do a 2-part series all about like budget backpacking gear, how to get stuff either cheap or free. Anyway, I'll catch you guys next time.